If you find reading a textbook is really difficult for you, you are not alone. It's tough. Textbooks are dense. They have a lot of information in them, and they're not always the most interesting thing to read. So you have to be an active reader. So you're taking notes, you're thinking really, really hard about what you're reading, you're trying to make connections between what you're reading and other things you've heard, seen, or read, and it's a lot more intense. The strategy I want to share with you is called SQ3R. SQ3R is an acronym. The S stands for survey, the Q stands for question, and there's 3 R's. Read, recite, review. There was a lot to this strategy that may help you, so let's go through the steps one by one. Step 1 is to survey the text. So this means you're pre-reading the chapter or section. You're surveying it. You're not reading it, you're just looking it over. So with a section like this in my book, Lesson 1, Hunter-Gatherers, what I'll do is I'll look at the titles, the headings, bold words, italicized words, highlighted words, pictures, graphs, and charts. So starting off, I noticed the section's title is called Hunter-Gatherers. There are some red headings here. The Paleolithic Age, Surviving in the Paleolithic Age, Finding Food, The Invention of Tools, Fire Sparks Change, Language and Arts, The Ice Ages, What Changes Came with the Ice Ages, and How Did the Ice Ages Affect Humans? So those were all the headings, and just by those headings, I could piece together a little summary of the chapter. So it looks like we're going to be learning about people in an age called the Paleolithic Age. They apparently hunted and gathered to find their food. We hope they survived, and obviously they must have, but how did they do it? I see a painting over here that might, or a little piece of art here that might help me understand how they may have found shelter. They apparently made inventions to survive, like fire and this tool over here. They developed some sort of language and art, and they show the art. The Ice Ages occur. They must have had to change, or actually the Ice Ages must have changed things a bit, and we would have had to change with it and adapt to the Ice Age. So here it talks about how the Ice Age affected us. So right there, I already have a summary of the chapter, and I haven't even read it yet. If we look at bold words, italicized words, and highlighted words, we get an idea of the vocabulary we need to look out for. So like Paleolithic, very important word, says how to pronounce it. Down here there's a little definition of it. So we're looking at just these words. We're not looking at the definition necessarily, we're just looking at the words and kind of previewing them. There are tons of images. We have this image I mentioned before. We have the image of the tool, and you could already sort of take a guess as to what tools they made and how. Looks like a stone tool. They have a preview of what the art looked like and how they may have used art to communicate. You have a map over here showing a change that happened in the Ice Age and how people would have migrated during the Ice Age. And you have a painting over here showing you how people may have been affected by the Ice Age and how they would have survived using fire, better shelter, maybe better clothing. Next, the author also puts questions throughout the section. Read the questions. They give you a great idea of what the author wants you to focus on. And if the author wants you to focus on it, your teacher probably does too. There's also questions interspersed throughout the chapter, like here, guiding question, what was life like during the Paleolithic Age? The essential question, how do people adapt to their environment? So those types of questions give you a great idea of what the overall section is about and what the author thinks you should focus on. So you've looked at the section, you've surveyed it. Next, you're going to ask yourself some questions. This here is going to help you have purpose for your reading. So a lot of times when you're reading a textbook, it's information you're not necessarily excited to read about. Asking some questions will trick you to care. Will give you purpose and give you a reason to care as you read. So what they mean by writing questions is maybe turn a heading into a question, so you care about reading that section where the heading's at. We have a section entitled Surviving in the Paleolithic Age. You might ask yourself, what does Paleolithic mean? So what does that word even mean in the first place? That's a great question. Write it down. When you actually read the section, you're going to be more interested to know what Paleolithic is, what that word means, and you'll have purpose. My question might be, what is the Paleolithic Age? What does that word mean? And maybe, how did humans survive through this age? There must have been some kind of obstacles to survival. How did they surpass that? How did they overcome those obstacles? So you do that for each heading. Write down a question or two. Look at the pictures too. So maybe you're looking at the tool and you ask yourself, what was that tool used for? You probably already have a great guess, but when you actually read, it'll tell you maybe what the tool was made of as well, and what it was used for. Maybe here in the art, you have a question of how did they make this art? What sorts of paint did they use? So when you actually do read the section, you somewhat care. You have purpose now. Purpose to find out the answer to your question. So you're seeing this is way different than passively reading, where you just open the book and start reading, and you try to enjoy it as you read, like a novel. With a textbook, you're being much more active. You're doing a lot more. You're doing this surveying, you're doing this questioning, you're taking notes as well. So now it's the step where you just read. Everything before was pre-reading. So this is before reading. This is what you do before reading. And now you're going to read. Now during reading, it's a good idea to stop and take some notes. Don't take notes every single sentence, because then you're going to be writing everything down. You're going to think everything's super important. Instead, read through the whole page, and then once you've read through that page and decided what is important, write those things down. So make sure that you know what you're talking about, and that you don't read the whole chapter and realize at the very end, I don't get it. Stop and recite what you just read. Don't look, but try to recite without looking. So I just read this section, and it is about the word Paleolithic. It means old stone. They have an age called the Old Stone Age, and this took place from 2.5 million years ago to 8,000 BC. And during that time, I don't remember everything. I have to look back, which is fine. So if you don't remember everything, reread. That's a really basic strategy that a lot of people overlook. Reread the section. I also talked about nomads. These people don't have a home. They're always on the move, trying to find food and shelter. So that's something I forgot to mention, but it's pretty important. So you recite what you've just read, and as you do that and you're making your way through the section, you're reciting what you're reading, you're taking some notes on those main things that you're reciting. And then when you're all done, you review. This just means look over the notes you took. If you didn't really take notes, I'd suggest just doing another survey. So, survey the text. Look it over again. But now this time, instead of just stopping at, I see the heading here. Read the heading and try to recite what you remember that was important. So, if you don't have notes doing a survey again, it's sort of an alternative. But taking notes is much better. I'd suggest something like Cornell notes or just a basic outline notes that you might take. So to recap, the strategy SQ3R means survey, question, read, recite, review. Once again, don't let the simplicity of this strategy scare you away from using it. Because of its simplicity, it's easy to follow, and you'll be able to get some results from it. Altogether, in a combination, the SQ3R should hopefully help you understand your text a little bit better. I hope this video has been helpful, and good luck with reading informational texts.